Hello, my awesome little Year 7 artists. Glad you could join me. This is a brief little tutorial on our cat for the final, which is called Seeing Double. Now, just so you know as well, this assignment will be a cat, and you'll need to have all the written stuff done and submitted as well. But as you can see up here, I've got a couple of examples of different artists that have tried doing rubbings or frotage, as we call it in the art world. And yeah, they're pretty good. You can see that there's different sort of methodologies and people are inspired by different people. And we'll get into that as we go along. So without further ado, here's my attempt. Righto, so first of all you can see I've got a little seahorse there. I've got a few bits and pieces around my studio. It's not really an ideal thing, but we'll try it out. Remember, you're looking for textures. So here's an example of some that I did last night, just around the place. That's the doorstep that I did, some brick, and little bits and pieces, bit of wood grain in there as well. So I'm putting that aside, and we have some newspaper. Now, newspaper is a good one because it's nice and thin. You can use different surfaces. Now, the texture I got off that was the back of a milk crate. You can get any kind of paper really for this. I'm using printer paper for my main one, but now let's try it with a dried bud. As you can see, too 3D, too bumpy, a bit hard to get around it. It works a little, but it's not really coming up. No good. Try the seahorse. Again, it does leave an imprint, but it's a little bit frustrating and your paper crinkles up. And if your paper's thinner than printer paper, generally it'll tear. So no good. Now, you notice my pencil there is a 6B. The darker you've got it, the better. Oh, coins. Coins are good. Coins, they generally tend to come up very nicely. Anything that's sort of flat but with a texture, kind of ideal. You see I'm working on that. Comes up. Notice my pencil's on an angle, so I'm covering as much shading as possible while I do this. You can see it really starting to pick up those details. I'm not going too hard. But it is picking it up. And again, I've got a 5-cent piece now. Tend to press the paper down over the top. Nice, it's coming up. Now, this is just a test sheet of paper I've got. Now, everything's on printer paper except for what's on newspaper, but I suppose if you're really gentle, you could use tissue or baking paper as well, depending on what you're after. Now, found a nice bit of lace. Thought I'd give that a go. Yep. Yeah, that's coming up all right. Some of the details. There's a little bit fiddly, I found. There's a little bit too much bits and pieces. So, I mean, it looks all right and it comes up. It really is up to you what you use for your textures. Whole idea of this process is so that you can sort of see the textural detail of the world around you. It's a crucial part of art. And also to learn a little bit about abstract compositions, because that's what we're after here. We're creating an abstract composition. So if you remember, composition is the grouping of elements in an artwork. Now, found this lying around. It's a pencil case, but it has a nice texture on the surface. Actually, my son's old pencil case from when he was in primary school. It has a nice little grid surface. I thought, yeah, that's nice. Could come up nicely. It's really fine and really bumpy, and you can sort of see it has that mesh look to it. Like it. Fruit bags is a good one as well, like netting, fruit netting, if you've got like mandarins or anything like that around. Do yourself and your parents a favour though. Don't try and, do an impression of your sister's head or, you know, keep it sensible, obviously, and keep it within your house. You don't need to go any further. Now, everything I've got here is just stuff I had lying around my studio. So, yeah, nice. I like that one. Beautiful. So now we've got a nice fresh sheet of paper. We're going to talk about composition. So what we're looking at is, obviously, as I said before, placing the elements in a nice, aesthetically pleasing way. The element obviously being texture and tone and stuff. So if that's your outside of your artwork, we're going by a rule of thirds. That means you can go a third of the way across, a third of the way down, from left or right. If you imagine a grid like that, divided up into thirds, where those grid corners are the focal points. And you can see I'm writing that in there. Often hard to explain this stuff when you don't have a whiteboard handy, like we do in class. But there you go, you can see those are the main focal points, where your eye gets drawn to first. Just to give you a sort of example, now I'm thinking, you know, very abstract here. It doesn't need to necessarily look like anything. Now, yours can look like something if you want, but I'm just doing just basic shapes just to figure out how I want it to look. So I've got it in a sort of backwards L composition. It's just shapes, nothing in it. But the focal point, the main focal point is at the bottom right-hand corner, a third of the way from the right, a third of the way up from the bottom. You can see it has a good little L shape to it. That's just for a purely abstract, non-realistic, just a jumble of shapes. Just get an idea of how I want it to look. A lot of art's often planning. So that's why we get you to annotate things and draw things out so many times. Alright, now I'm going to show you a little technique in a minute. I'm still fiddling around with bits and bobs. Now this technique is where you get paper folded up, and it can look really interesting. Just different folds. If you're good at origami, now I'm absolutely terrible at it, but if you can do origami, doing an origami figure or something, or an animal, and then flattening it out would be ideal, but I'm just keeping it real simple. Just bits of magazine pages that I had lying around. You can use just normal paper, and just folding it into basic sort of angular shapes, like folding a paper aeroplane sort of thing. This is a good way of being able to control where lines and folds and shapes can go within your artwork. It's good as putting a sort of main composition down. So you have, I'll speed this bit up, but you can sort of see the general idea. Notice that I'm also putting in some toning just to make shapes come forward. Just a little bit of toning just around the edges, don't have to do much. You can draw more into it, like if you look at the start of the video, you notice there's some that did like full eyes and everything else, or made, you know, mosquitoes or dragonflies out of the shapes, or collaged it, cut them out, put them in. Brilliant. So I'm just working into it by hand. So that's basically it. I mean, now obviously yours could be a little bit more detailed, a little bit more interesting. Here's my example here. That's one piece. That's me as me doing it just as a normal piece without any collage. Then I thought I'd get some collage into it, and you can see that this one, I've sort of been inspired a bit by Pablo Picasso's work on that, you know, the way he uses newspaper, whereas the first one was more inspired by this guy, Kandinsky. So good luck, Year 7s, and I wish you all the best. Stay safe. Remember, this is a cat. If you do multiples of these, that's cool as well. It's really not that much out of your day, and it depends how into it you get, but can't wait to see the work come in. Stay safe, guys.